Good evening. Lieutenant Colonel Sankalp Kumar, Lance Naik Gurmail Singh, Havaldar Subhash Chand, Manpreet Singh, Lance Naik Sukhwinder Singh, Naik Panna Lal, Kuldeep Kumar and Satnam Singh. Remember these names. They died for what you and I cherish most, our democracy, killed in the line of duty, fighting terrorists in Uri, the first of 4 attacks in Jammu and Kashmir today. On the program this evening, bullet versus the ballot. Has Jammu and Kashmir been targeted because of the higher voter turnout in the first 2 phases of polls? Well, this is our top story. 4 attacks in one day in Jammu and Kashmir, an attack on our democracy squarely in the middle of elections in the state. The Prime Minister has tweeted, 25 crore Indians bowed to our brave army men who sacrificed their lives. These men lived and they died for the nation. We will not forget them. Indian Army soldiers lobbing grenades into their own bunkers at a camp in Uri, 20 kilometers from the line of control. The goal to eliminate the last remaining terrorists, Fidain or suicide attackers who'd infiltrated this camp in the early hours of the morning, killing a lieutenant colonel and 7 jawans and 3 policemen. By the end of the day, the army had taken out 6 terrorists in Uri. But this is not where it ended. There were 4 attacks in Jammu and Kashmir today, just days ahead of the Prime Minister's visit to Uri, where he's scheduled to campaign on Monday ahead of the 3rd phase of polling in the state. Sources tell NDTV that at the moment, there is no change to Mr. Modi's plans. The attacks today took place in Uri, Sora on the outskirts of Srinagar, Shopia and Tral, with sources indicating to NDTV that the attacks in Uri and Sora were synchronized. In Sora, on the outskirts of Srinagar, a top Lashkar commander, Qari Israr, was killed as he tried to enter the city. He was killed in a gun battle after the vehicle he was travelling in was chased down and stopped just 500 meters from a police post that was the target. Like in Uri, the attackers were wearing black uniforms. The police in Srinagar say that they'd been tipped off on the possibility of this attack, which is why they were able to stop it.
यदि पाकिस्तान को इसे रोकने में कोई कठिनाई आ रही है तो भारत के साथ उसे बातचीत करनी चाहिए। भारत उसमें सहयोग करने को तैयार है, लेकिन क्यों होता है कि बराबर जो आतंकवादी भारत की सरहदों को पार करके आते हैं और यहां तबाही पैदा करते हैं इसे हिंदुस्तान में, वही सब सारे आतंकवादी पाकिस्तान में ही घरों में छिपे हुए हैं, उनको छुपा कर रखा गया है। क्या इसकी जवाबदेही पाकिस्तान की नहीं बनती?
Later in the day, in the 3rd terror attack, grenades were lobbed at a police station in Shopia. Fortunately, no one was injured. But in Tral in the Pulwama region, 8 people were injured and rushed to hospital after a hand grenade was thrown at a bus stand. Today's attacks across Kashmir come a week after a 24-hour-long encounter in Arnya near Jammu, in which 5 civilians and 3 army personnel were killed. A clear attempt to disrupt the election process in the state, which has seen a record turnout in the first 2 phases of polling. With Sheikh Tariq and Zafar Iqbal, Vishnu Shom for NDTV. All right, we've got some breaking news now coming in. Barkha Dutt joins us for the latest on that. Barkha, it's no secret where these men came from, but there is a direct link to Pakistan which is now becoming evident. What are the details?
Well, Vishnu, I've been talking to top army officers on the ground, and here's the news that we have. It's very grave on a day when India's most wanted Hafiz Saeed has been spewing hatred and venom against India openly with the help of the Pakistani establishment. Senior army officers confirming to us that there is a direct Pakistan link with the multi-pronged terror attacks that have taken place in 4 different parts of the Kashmir Valley today. Here's what we know. 1, army sources confirming that the infiltration is, to quote an army officer, very, very fresh, possibly took place in the last couple of days. 2, army sources tracing this infiltration to a staging camp in an area called Cham in Pakistan, saying the training camp is near Muzaffarabad, but these terrorists had moved down to an area called Cham, which was the staging pad for them to make this infiltration bid, which finally resulted in that attack on that army camp in Uri today. And Vishnu, I need to give you details that we have, exclusive details that we have of the kind of ammunition and weaponry that these 6 terrorists were carrying in Uri. Do you know that each terrorist had 10 grenades each? And even more importantly, between the 6 of them, they had 56 magazines of AK-47. Now, as you know, one magazine is capable of firing 30 rounds. So this is how well stocked they were. And in what is likely to create an even worsening equation between India and Pakistan, army sources confirming to us that both the shotguns and the food packets that have been recovered from the bodies of these 6 slain terrorists have clear markings of made in Pakistan, have clear Pakistani linkages. So army officials at the highest level tracking and connecting this at multiple levels, from ammunition to food packets to naming the staging camp, right to Pakistan.
All right, Barkha, thanks very much for joining us with those breaking news details that link to Pakistan becoming abundantly clear. Barkha, one more point. I don't know if you've been tracking this very closely, but just 48 hours back, the Indian Army in a high-altitude operation had taken out a bunch of these terrorists at 14,000 feet. And what they recovered from them was also very interesting. Very, very sophisticated skiing equipment, crampons, Swiss-made winter wear, GPS equipment, and of course a lot of weaponry and ammunition. And the reason I bring this up is because, you know, it just builds to the point that you're making, that these are very sophisticated weapons coming in. These are very well-trained terrorists coming in. These people are deadlier than they ever have been.
Absolutely, do the math. I mean, you think of these 6 terrorists today carrying 56 magazines of AK-47, each one capable of 30 rounds, 30 into 56. You know the math better than I do, Vishnu. And I think what's really worrying, and this is what sources are confirming to us, is that this was a synchronized attack across 3 different regions of the Kashmir Valley. Uri is in North Kashmir, Tral is in South Kashmir, Srinagar is in Central Kashmir. And this is the scale and the breadth of the terrorist attack that has taken place today. Just 2 days before the Prime Minister's first rally in the valley, and 3 days before polling is supposed to take place in 2 of the 3 areas that came under direct fire today. So this is breaking news we're giving you. Pakistan markings on the food packets and the shotguns and the level of ammunition, and even naming the staging base that is suspected to have been the route that provided the infiltration, a place called Cham in Pakistan.
All right, Zafar Iqbal also joins us now. He joins us from Uri, where the largest of the encounters today took place. Zafar, there is another side to this story as well. If the army did not react as quickly as they did, if soldiers from a nearby post didn't respond to the initial alert as quickly as they did, this would have been an absolute bloodbath. It started at 3:30 in the morning. By 9:30 it was all over, because the army got its act together in double quick time.
Well, that's right. In fact, they'd chosen the time, specifically the encounter took place at 3:30 in the morning. Understand, this Uri is a very mountainous area. There are lots of jungles here. There is thick fog. It's very difficult to track the movement of the militants at that point in time. And they attacked this army camp at 3:30 in the morning. The first encounter was with the policemen who were at the gate. The 2 policemen were killed, 2 militants were killed. Then the rest of the 4 militants managed to storm inside the camp. Now the army quick reaction teams came into action at that very point in time, and they sort of took control of the situation, and further reinforcements, we're told, were sent in as quickly as possible. There was a lull for a couple of hours at around 9 in the morning. The army believed that all the militants had been killed, but then the firing resumed, and perhaps 2 more militants who were still there were killed later in the gunfight. So obviously the army reacted very quickly, but since this was an artillery unit, not many army people were in fact carrying rifles and weapons at that point in time. But but the reaction of the army has been very quick to this audacious militant attack. That's what has stopped further casualties from taking place. But nevertheless, 8 soldiers were killed and 6 militants were gunned down and 3 policemen were killed. All of those militants believed to have been infiltrated just recently from the Uri sector, and they just specifically targeted this artillery unit.
All right, Zafar, thanks very much for joining us with those details. I'm just going to request that video is played out again. If we can just see those images full screen, because they actually do tell a story of what was happening. This was an encounter which was being played out on live television in a sense, because the images that we saw were images which were being, and we did not broadcast these lives, I need to mention that point, but cameras were on a high ground, and what you see over there on your screens is Indian Army Jawans moving from bunker to bunker within their own camp, throwing in grenades to ensure that each and every camp is rid of any enemies who might still be lurking over there. We'll stay with these pictures for a few moments so that you can see the Indian Army in action, taking out, eliminating these terrorists who entered our country. All right, we're going to keep playing these images as we carry on with our debate this evening. The big issue this evening, bullet versus the ballot. Everybody knows what this is all about. Certainly in our country, it's come right in the middle of elections. There are more phases of these elections which are left. There has been a record turnout in India, in Jammu and Kashmir for these elections. It seems quite clear why these terrorists would choose to attack now. These were synchronized attacks. 4 attacks in one day in Jammu and Kashmir. Has this state been targeted because of the higher voter turnout? Joining us to debate this, the former Army Chief General Shankar Roy Chaudhary, Subramaniam Swamy, the leader of the BJP with us, Vikramaditya Singh, the leader of the PDP, Junaid Mattu, spokesperson of the People's National Conference, and joining us from Islamabad, Air Vice Marshal retired Shehzad Chaudhary, a well-known strategic affairs expert. Air Marshal, let me come to you first, sir. The very latest news that we have at this stage is that there are clear markings to Pakistan on some of the guns which these terrorists had and on the food packets. Isn't it about time that Pakistan accepted that you are, in a sense, a sponsor of terrorism?
Yeah, Vishnu, I know you would start with that, but unfortunately what happened in Karachi, at the Karachi airport, if you remember, in Pakistan a few months back, there were telltale signs of Indian ammunition, Indian arms, as well as Indian medicine that were being carried by people. But that's, I think, not the case that we really want to discuss. What we need to say is that it's lamentable. It's unfortunate that such a thing happened, and I don't think it should have happened simply because of the fact that it's important for the Kashmiris to turn out in the numbers that they must. I think the first 2 rounds that you've had have been very good in the sense for the Kashmiris, because 70% did turn out, and one was hoping that this number will be sustained and maintained, because it is important for the Kashmiris to ensure that their voice is relevant in the political system of India, so that they can continue to sustain their right and their demands and their interests are looked after.
So their demands and their interests seem to be within India, sir. They seem to be endorsing the democratic process which these terrorists are trying to kill. Isn't it about time
for them?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Vishnu, it's important for them to be a part of the democratic process, especially with specific to the state assembly elections, because that is where their interests are going to be looked after. I think it's important for them to have their voices,
state which exists in
maintain
India,
control of the sound of the voices that come out of the state of Kashmir. And let me just compare for you their turnout as far as the national parliamentary elections were concerned in India. Remember, if the entire India had almost 60-65% turnout for your parliamentary elections, and from Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, you had.
So, do you think those terrorists who have entered India today have just come for a lark, sir? They are trying to ensure that those numbers of people turning out actually go lower, so that the point that you are making is actually turning out to be correct. But that will not be the case, sir, because people will turn out. Mr. Swamy, sir, do you have a point?
I very much hope so. I am not trying to say that they should not turn out. I am suggesting to you that someone is trying to stop the Kashmiris to turn out.
Yes, sir.
The Kashmiris
sir,
must
the people
turn out
who
in
are
a way
stopping
because they ensure that
are those people in black Fidai uniforms
and the
who
world
launched an attack on my country in 4 places today, sir. 3 of them simultaneously, sir. It's about time, sir.
Vishnu, unless you let me speak and say what I must say, or because you don't want to hear what I have to say. What I am suggesting to you is that it's lamentable, because it's important for the Kashmiris to be a part of the political process in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. I said 60 to 70% and 80% turnout is important, because that will make their voice relevant from and within the state of Kashmir. What is, if you want to compare as to what would be, let's say for example,
so who are these terrorists, sir? Where were they coming from?
How integrated they are. Listen to me. How integrated they are with India would be a source of concern. But remember, their turnout for the Indian parliamentary elections in Jammu and Kashmir was only 30%. So if they turn out 80% for the state elections, it is good for Kashmir.
Dr. Swamy,
it is good for their cause.
He says there is
that is Pakistan's point of view.
Mismatch between the number of people who turned up for the general elections and these elections, sir.
Well, the parliament elections were held under the central government of UPA, and this is in fact a huge endorsement of Mr. Narendra Modi, that people have come in this large numbers. Now his this gentleman's concern for the Kashmiris turnout is very touching. I hope that Pakistan can hold some elections. In fact, their civil society has now been reduced to a practical zero. It has been taken over by the mullahs and the ISI and the army. They may find some medicines and shells or something of Indian origin in Karachi airport, but they haven't been able to catch a single Indian soldier or Indian based terrorist in Pakistan. We have, on the other hand, every day we are catching Pakistanis.
Today. All of those bodies are.
And therefore, the world should now take notice and declare Pakistan as a terrorist state and impose the necessary sanctions.
Sir, Air Marshal, before I go across to my other panelists, you know, I mean, there is no question of talking between India and Pakistan. This is the best that we can do. You know, me in my television studio and you across. The governments are not going to talk, sir, unless this ends. Isn't there a big mismatch between those people who are doing this, attacking India, and people who want peace, perhaps people like yourself? That Pakistan is not one, sir, it is maybe 2, maybe 3. You have your army, you have your ISI, you have your government. Who is doing this? Nobody really seems to know.
Well, I can tell you that the army is actually fighting its own war on the western border, and a lot of trouble is coming out of Afghanistan, especially from the areas where it is expected or where it is known that the Indian intelligence continues to have an influence in the NDS and some of the groups there on the Afghan side of the border. That is our problem for currently, and you have another war going on in 1/3 of your country and the Naxalites. So I really don't know why would India and Pakistan try and create more tensions, especially on the border with each other, and especially considering that you've been actually keeping the LOC and the working boundary activated for the last couple of months. I'm surprised with 6.5 lakhs of people of military and 7 lakhs of military in Kashmir. How can anyone actually slip in terms of your
so you know that terrain as well as anybody, Air Marshal. So we've all seen Jammu and Kashmir.
No, I don't know. No, I don't know.
So well then let me describe. So then sir, I suggest you pay a visit, sir, because I'll describe it to you in one sentence. It's high, it's mountainous, it's extreme terrain. It is impossible to defend every square inch. It is militarily unfeasible, sir. That's how people get in.
And
it also happens to be cold now, sir. There are misty conditions as well.
Let me suggest to you that this is the work of people who are living already within Kashmir.
No, sir, it's not.
And if you know what you've done to the Kashmiris in the last so many years now, 100,000 have died at the hands of the Indian military.
Sir, the terrorists had 56 magazines of AK-47. They had approximately 8 to 10 grenades each, sir. They were here to fight a war.
You can buy this stuff from anywhere.
Sir, not in India, sir. This is not Peshawar, sir.
You can recreate it. You can recreate it in your own factories.
No, sir, we can't. We cannot recreate these grenades. We cannot recreate those GPS systems. We cannot recreate Swiss mountaineering equipment. We cannot do that, sir.
And night vision guns.
And night vision equipment of this standard, sir.
You can buy them off anywhere. These are internationally available. I don't think India was
okay. So let's get.
But that's exactly what they were finding
fair enough,
well.
sir. I want to move on. General Roy Chaudhary, from the time that you commanded the Indian Army, do you see a qualitative difference in the terrorists coming in? They seem to be. They're definitely better equipped. They appear to be more motivated. They seem to be more skilled fighters. Isn't this another example of how they are being trained perhaps by the Pakistan Army proper?
Well, the first takeaway I have from this incident is a feeling of concern. There were 4 attacks, as you said, delivered over not a very long time span, about 8 to 10 hours or 12 hours, almost simultaneously. That means there must be a central coordinating body sitting somewhere in India. And my concern is that we have not yet traced out which this controlling body is, because unless that exists, you cannot have 4 such attacks taking place in a more or less coordinated manner, one near the line of control and one in the extreme south of Kashmir and 2 in between. The coordinating headquarters is somewhere inside Kashmir, and the sooner we find that out, the better. The second thing is that as far as the line of control is concerned, people did come across, people will come across in ones and twos, and they were eliminated, which is the way things work. So, but our main concern should be the controlling headquarters, which is sitting somewhere inside the valley of Kashmir, and we have to now ensure that this headquarters is dug out, because this has got the support of elements which want to separate Kashmir from India,
okay.
And the sooner we find out who they are, the better.
Can I come in on this?
Marshal, yes, certainly you can, sir. I'll just put in one more question and come in on that point. And this, sir, and my question to you is that the head of the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, Hafiz Saeed, here's what he said today. Narendra Modi should be straightforward and resolve the Kashmir. It should be straightforward, resolve the Kashmir dispute. And if you are not ready to resolve it, then God willing, Kashmir will be the gateway and we will launch a jihad against India. This is the man speaking in Lahore, sir. There were train loads taking people over there. And you talk about wanting peace with India, sir?
No. I'm not wanting peace with India. I want peace with India, but on terms that are acceptable to both sides. Having said that, let me just refer back to what General Chaudhary was saying in terms of the difficulties of the terrain that is there on the LOC. If you remember the January or the February of the last year when the LOC violations began, the Indian Army actually detected an old woman crossing over from the Pakistani side, who had just gone on to the Pakistani side from Indian side to meet up with the family and then was returning. So the Indian military was able to pick up an old woman, a stooped old woman walking across and then erupted the LOC for the next about 8 months. So that is the level of vigilance that you have on the LOC. It's almost impossible for the last 7, 8 years, 10 years now, there hasn't been any infiltration. It has been coming down and down and down. That's been the statement from your side. Now, having said that, come to the Hafiz Saeed factor. So Hafiz Saeed held actually 2 days of... Let me just complete on the Hafiz Saeed thing. Yeah, 2 days of assembly of his own party, which is a recognized religious party in Pakistan that does a lot of work of madrasas, etc., etc. Yeah. This is Jamaat-ud-Dawa. Okay, now and he's not proscribed, and he's not a citizen who's broken any Pakistani laws, and there is no proof against him despite having been put in the court for the last 3 times.
He seems to be breaking a lot of rules as far as we are concerned.
Well, let me suggest to you, in that case, we need to share that evidence. We need to be able to talk to each other. We need to create mechanisms that we should be able to stop such movement of such people and statements of such people. You know, Pakistan has never complained about what Mr. Raj Thackeray or Bal Thackeray used to say or still says. No, that's not the point. I think we have to look at the Indian government and talk about what the responsible people. Let me.
One is a politician, the other is a terrorist.
Well, the point here is that one is an Indian citizen, the other is a Pakistani citizen. One is a terrorist for you, the other one is a terrorist for Pakistan. Well, what do you do with such people? You really can't, I can't sit in Pakistan and begin to declare people terrorists in India. And similarly, you should avoid doing that. No, he's not. He's not. You're wrong there.
Oh, they have issued a reward for his capture, the Americans. What is he saying?
All right. No, you're wrong. Again, once again wrong. Once again wrong. Mischaracterizing. The Americans have issued an award for any kind of evidence that can be brought against him.
I wonder why, sir.
It is not an award.
I wonder why.
But
let me bring in Vikramaditya Singh, leader of the PDP. Everybody wants elections in Kashmir. Everybody wants a high voter turnout. Are you worried, Vikramaditya Singh, that now people will be scared in places like Uri, which go to polls soon, because of this violence?
Vishnu, before I begin, my deepest condolences to the Jawans, the army officers, the police personnel and the civilians who lost their lives, to their families. I'd like to say that it's very unfortunate, and we all join to condemn this incident at a national and at the state level. And yes, definitely it's a concern, and it's one of the reasons why we were a bit concerned about the overhype of the media as far as the high voter turnout in the first few phases was concerned, was precisely for this reason. There was a genuine feeling of concern and fear that the more we talk about it, the more hype we create, the more sort of we are pushing the anti-nationals and the militants to a corner and pushing them to react, and that's exactly what has happened as a result of that. But I'm still very hopeful that seeing the resolve in the people of Jammu and Kashmir, not just in the valley, I mean even in hilly areas of Jammu and in the border areas of Jammu, where I have personally been touring a lot, people are going to come out in very large numbers despite this, and they have taken a decision to vote and vote for change, and hopefully, God willing, if all goes well, that will happen.
The Prime Minister still intends to go to Uri.
Yes, he should go, and I'm a bit surprised that someone would say that if you are celebrating the democracy, the fact that the first time such a high turnout has come, people, you have seen television pictures of it. In fact, in the portion which Pakistan has occupied of Kashmir, most of the people there on television are only watching our elections, because they don't have elections in their country. And if we celebrate that, the terrorists might get jealous, and therefore we are provoking them. That's an extraordinary thing to say. We in this country celebrate democracy, and when we find that people are coming out and voting in large numbers, of course the media has a right to bring this out, and especially when Pakistan, the Pakistani person here said that in the parliament elections we got only 30% vote. So therefore, the fact that we got 70% vote is a matter for celebration.
General Roy Chaudhary, you know, it's...
no, absolutely. I
yes,
agree with what Mr. Swami is saying there. Absolutely, it's a matter for celebration. But all I'm trying to say is that we have 5 phases of election, out of which only 2 have happened so far. There are yet another 3 phases left. And I think it's very important that the right signal is sent. And the high voter turnout has sent that signal. The media has every right to talk about it. But also then we must be prepared for incidents like this and not be surprised when there are elements both perhaps within Kashmir Valley and from across the border that are trying desperately to disrupt this process that we today are so proud of in this country and in Jammu.
We are prepared for that. Let them disturb it and face the consequences. We know that what our strengths are.
But unfortunately, the consequences have to be faced by the people of Jammu and
Kashmir. Well, the whole of India has to face it, because the military is financed by the whole of India. And we have to all pay for it. We have to pay for higher fuel prices if there's a war. But if the war is inevitable, we are ready for it.
Do you think it's inevitable?
In my opinion, we are heading towards a war, because Pakistan is taken over by hothead militants and the ISI and the clerics.
But is that necessarily the way ahead for us?
It's not the way ahead, but when Pakistan is collapsed, what can you do? There is no civil society there. Who do you talk to? He says we should talk to the Pakistanis. To whom do we talk to?
Sir, it's a nuclear state, sir.
So what? It may be a nuclear state. If after all the world has seen many wars without nuclear weapons being used. It's not an issue on which Pakistan can take a unilateral decision.
General Roy Chaudhary, last word to you, sir. You've been in the army for decades. You served as our chief. Do you think from a military standpoint that is almost inevitable at this stage? That are we heading towards some sort of major conflict with Pakistan?
Well, we are already at conflict with Pakistan.
Will there be an escalation?
But the level is low.
Okay.
Level is low. As far as escalation is concerned, the nuclear factor is a very big factor. But that apart, we are certainly not, things are not peaceful between us and Pakistan given the state of affairs on the border.
Yep.
And there will be dialogue. Of course, there will be dialogue. Though what there is to talk about, let us see whether India will talk to Pakistan at all unless there is something to say. That also remains to be seen.
Lots of question marks.
For the present, it's a big question mark, and I do not know whether there will be any point in talking to Pakistan.
Fair enough, sir. At this stage, perhaps it seems impossible. Will that next stage ever emerge? You know, you were talking. You made an important point about conflict, or possibly the inevitability of that. In all of the firing which was actually taking place on the international border in the Jammu area, the escalation had taken place to the level of medium mortars.
Yes.
The next step is artillery.
That's right.
And that's pretty much when a war begins. We
That's
were
right.
essentially one step
That's right.
away from something as
That's
big as
right.
that. It's a frightening reality. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. We're going to end this segment. We're going to remember those brave soldiers, and the sad reality is that there'll be many more like them, who are going to fight for our country, protect us against people who try and terrorize our country. India will not be terrorized.